Hi, my name is Bob and I'm renovating this 1973 Egg Harbor Sportfish boat. Well, welcome to Renovation Sportfish. This episode we're going to kick off the 2017 projects. Now, I'm going to do a little differently than all my previous episodes. This episode and the next two, I'm just going to do like one project per video because I really only worked on 3 major projects in 2017. Wasn't my most productive year. But the projects were pretty challenging. It was all woodwork projects. And yeah, I got to learn a lot about woodworking doing these projects. So in this one, we're going to cover the main cabinets, which some people would call the hanging lockers or something like that. They're kind of right behind me here. I had to rebuild them. The old ones, the bottoms were all rotted, and I really didn't like the boxy kind of look that the factory had on them. So wanted to redo them. I did save the plywood. Hopefully I can use it for something else, maybe the galley cabinet someday. But yeah, so we're going to go through and we'll take a look at these and how I actually made them. It took me about 4 months to make them. Probably from January to whatever 4 months would be, April, and then put them in. I also did the windshield trim, lower trim up here behind me as well. So we'll take a little bit of look at that one as well. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so we're back in the shop. Don't mind the disaster behind me. Hurricane didn't come through here. It's just a mess. I'm trying to do a little fall cleanup and reorganization. And at the moment, it is not organized at all. But we'll just focus on this panel here, which is one of the original cabinet side panels. Now I just wanted to point out, it's basically a box with a curved edge on it to go along the hull. And this notch over here is where the side window framing is. Now, other thing to point out with these, they did perform a function. They were not just the whole thing. They actually supported the side windows, which also supports the windshield and the roof and everything else. So they were attached to all that, and I'll get to that in a while here, but just to let you know, they were somewhat structural as well, I think. I took these apart as easily as I could because I wanted to use them as templates for one, and I just wanted to figure out how they were actually put together. And so we'll go over in a little bit how they were actually put together, and I basically follow the same construction that they did and size and everything when I made my new ones. Changed the design just a little bit, but the basic footprint of it and everything is all the same. So they're made out of this is 1/2-inch mahogany, ribbon striped, and it's really good quality mahogany, which I'll show in a minute, especially compared to what I bought, which was expensive, you know, mahogany plywood. But I don't think the quality is as good as this original stuff by any means. But anyways, we'll get into that too. And okay, so now we'll do a little comparison. I'll show the new and the old and some of the construction features of it. Okay, it's spun us around a little bit here, but you know, it might be easier to show over here. It's the original, and this piece here is the new piece. Now I know this original is aged a bit, and this is new, but I don't know what they're using for a core here. This has a thin veneer on both sides of the ribbon striped mahogany, same as the original, but the core on the original looks like mahogany to me. It just looks dark and has grain to it, and it just looks like solid mahogany pieces. Where this piece, maybe the center looks like mahogany, but the 2 outside pieces look more like birch. They're very light. And the one thing I don't like about that, well, there's many things, but if I ever chip it or scratch it, you can see in this corner how light it is. I'm going to have to do a little touch-up with stain or something. With the original, I found that if it's scratched, you can just put a little, just even varnish in there, and it's not as noticeable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But anyways, that's the difference between the two, so that's why I'm thinking this is a little better quality than what I bought. And this was not cheap either. I mean, this is just what you get now when you order, mahogany plywood. It's not marine grade, but I don't think this is either. So anyways, that's the difference between the two. Now we'll go into a little bit of the construction of this. And once again, pardon the background, but try to focus on what's in front of me here. Okay, so if this was, it is the cabinet side, and this is the top, which was, they used just a plywood. They didn't even use mahogany plywood. They just used a exterior grade plywood, 1/2 inch. And they installed it on top, something like that. There was some sort of cleat down here. And to attach it, they used these, well, you can see, they're like small ring shank nails. They do have a little bit of a head on them. They look like they're brass or bronze or something. And makes for a little bit difficult to remove something without damaging it. But so basically they nailed this down through the plywood. And once they had that all nailed down, they came over put a piece of laminate over the top of it to hide all the screws and just to cover up and make it look like a countertop, basically. White laminate is what they used. And then they had, this is a piece of the original trim. You can see the profile there. It has a little notch in it. And they put this right over the edge like that and covered up this edge of the plywood and the laminate. And then they took these same screws and just, nails, and they just nailed it in on the side here. So that was the basic construction for the top. In the front, I don't have the face frame that was on here, but if you think of this as the face frame, they put a rabbet in it, not like this, but it's just a small rabbet, so they could overlap the plywood here, so you wouldn't see this front edge. And then I'll have to bring you around to the side here. Pardon the movement. And then they screwed it in along the edge here, all the way down. There was no glue, maybe a little bit of glue along this edge here, but there was no glue on the top. It was just nailed down. And yeah, and as far as the face frame, that was just put together with glue, and they tongue and grooved it. Okay, so now that you made it through that wonderful explanation of everything, I will get to the pictures. Before I show the pictures of the mock-up of this thing, I'll just explain the tape over here. When I put these in, there was gaps. Obviously, I wanted to close them up, so I just put tape around the corners. I used different kinds of tape, whatever I had. And then I used the tape edge as a trace line instead of just the wood. So that's what you're going to see in these pictures, so let's check them out. construction of the new stuff. We'll just talk about the one thing that I really didn't like about these cabinets, and that was the boxy look they had. I mean, it didn't really go with the boat at all because the boat had all these curves on it, especially when you looked at the windshield and you could see all the camber of everything. So I wanted to do something there. And this was the original piece like I just showed, and of course it was on here like this, and you know, it's just straight and there's nothing fancy about it. So I was trying to figure out what to do, and so as I was sitting there, I saw this piece that was the bottom of the windshield, the trim that I was replacing in the same video here. And I just clamped it on here, as you can see by this picture right here. I was like, oh, that's it. I'll just put a wider piece and just clamp that on there and have a nicer top, and it'll kind of fit in with everything. So that's where I got my idea for curving the top trim and doing the top trim. So yeah, now we'll get into the construction phase of it. Now I built them basically the same way as the old ones. Made face frames out of mahogany. I used biscuits and epoxy to clamp them together. They used glue and tongue and groove kind of joint. Cut the same rabbet in the edge like I explained before, and attached them with number 6 screws. I was trying to find, these would be really small screws because they were right near the edge of the plywood. Plugged them with mahogany plugs. I used some number 8 screws here and there. One of the design features I changed on them, instead of them just being a hanging kind of a locker type thing, I just decided to put shelves in there instead, and an opening on the V-berth side so you could store, I don't know, your iPad or computer or books or whatever you're going to put in there. I'll put outlets and stuff in there like that, maybe a night light or whatever, reading light type of thing. So that's how I changed the design. Of course I changed the top like I said with the trim, and that's about it. You're also going to see in the pictures here that I pre-installed the cleats. I had cleats, vertical cleats, kind of towards the back here, and that was because there's some panels that just cover the back. The factory had the same type of panels, I just didn't talk about them. They're just a thin piece of plywood panel that just covers the back. And so you'll see those, and you'll see the cleats for the shelves, and then the shelves going in later on. Then once I had them all together in my shop here, brought them over to the boat, and then did a final fit before I brought them back to the shop, and then we'll pick up from there. So let's check out pictures of the construction of the cabinets. Once they were all fitted at the boat, I brought both cabinets back here to actually varnish them. Now, didn't really take any pictures of me actually varnishing them, so you're just going to see them, next time you see them, they're going to be at the boat, already varnished. It was a little cool, it was like late April, and I didn't feel like it was warm enough for the varnish to dry properly, so I just did them here in the shop. It was just a little bit easier. Did create a little bit of a stressful trip to bring them back over, putting them in the truck and getting them up into the boat. But at least I managed not to scratch them at that point. So yeah, I got them back at the boat, and then I put them in. One thing I didn't talk about, and you probably saw it in the construction part, was what I did for the top. And I do happen to have a little chunk of it right here, just a scrap piece of it. This is a Kume plywood. It's marine grade. People compare it to mahogany plywood. I don't think it's as nice as mahogany plywood. It might even be mahogany, I don't even know. But I use this. This is really good marine grade stuff that I have here. It's like 7 layers in a 1/2 inch. It's probably not even a 1/2 inch, but I call it a 1/2 inch. So yeah, it's good stuff. I liked it because it had a lighter color. I was using it for something else, but it had a lighter color, and as you'll notice on this boat as I go along, there's a lot of dark mahogany varnished wood in this boat, and it needs a little something. So I used this for the top. Didn't want to put laminate on it like the factory used. I just varnished it with all grip, or all wood I should say, just like I used on the exterior of the boat with a high gloss finish on it, whereas everything else I did in the satin finish. And then for the wood plugs, where I screwed it down to, I didn't nail it to the top like the factory did, I screwed it. I used an EP wood, which is a dark wood, and it gave a little bit of a pop to the top area, as you'll see in the pictures. Yeah, so once I got it over, I fitted it all in, and then I screwed it to the floor with the cleats I had at the bottom, and at the sides here, on the outsides of both pieces, I tabbed it all the way from the top down, just like the factory did. And for that I used a 6-inch fiberglass tape, they call it. It's a pre-cut 6-inch wide strip of fiberglass, and I used that just out of convenience instead of cutting all the strips of fiberglass myself. It was a thinner kind of fiberglass, so I ended up using 3 layers of it to match kind of the thicker factory stuff. And I also did on the insides of the cabinet, all on the top here, 3 layers as well, same place the factory did it. And I left the top off to do that, and I actually didn't put the top on for probably like a year later. Also, when I installed it, I had some blocking over here, which you might not see too well in the pictures, but it was screwed through on the side here, and then I screwed it into the side window framing to support that whole structure. I'll take a little video over there after this and take a better look at it, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, and that's about it. So yeah, let's get into the installation of this stuff. Okay, so this is the support that attaches the cabinet to the side window frame. And if I zoom out a little bit more, you can see the cleats that will eventually hold on the panel that's going to cover that whole back area. So you're looking at the custom trim I made for the opening at the V-berth side of the cabinets. And this piece of trim is just attached with epoxy. Okay, so now we're looking at the top of the starboard cabinet. And from the factory there was a large plastic tube coming down right here. That had all the wiring and controls ran through that. I'm going to run all the wiring and controls up at the I'm going to build a soffit up at the ceiling and run them through that, so I eliminated that tube, which I never really liked. Hey, one thing I failed to mention was the fact that I was going to reuse these cabinet doors, the factory ones. I made the openings so they would fit in there. Just have to be cleaned up a little bit and rehung someday. No rush to do that. Now we're looking at the trim just below the windshield. And this is the actual deck right here. I painted this little area that is in between, the same as the deck. And yeah, it just goes along. You can see how tight it is. That's why I had to install this first before I put this in. And that's starboard side. Now we'll just go over to the port side, and that's it. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Hope you got some enjoyment out of it, and come back for the next one. So until then, have a good one, and we'll see you very soon right here on Renovation Sportfish.